Welcome to today's special program, Federal Forum 2021, brought to you by ServiceNow. I'm your host, Francis Rose, with the Government Matters Thought Leadership Network. Today, we'll explore what digital transformation efforts DoD leaders have underway, how customer experience is improving interactions with citizens and employees across government, plus where people are leveraging data to assess cyber risks and keep agencies moving during their modernization journeys. We begin with Aaron Weiss, the Chief Information Officer at the Navy, George Duchak, the Chief Information Officer at the Defense Logistics Agency, and Kevin Brooks, Digital Strategist at ServiceNow. Welcome all, gentlemen. It's great to have you here. Aaron, I want to start with you. You said recently that you do not want the Navy to go back to pre-COVID practices. What did you mean by that, and what do you have underway to make sure that doesn't happen?
Yeah, thanks, Francis. I think what I meant by that was, as we discovered almost exactly a year ago, and by the way, I think it was a year ago that you and I were sitting out at FCA West having a perfectly normal conversation and couldn't imagine this is where we'd be a year later. But I think what we discovered in the intervening year is that we can move, as a department and as government, we can move extremely rapidly when we want to. We went to great lengths over the first 2 months of the pandemic to roll out the tools that are required for teleworking. We quadrupled the size of the telework infrastructure, doubled the bandwidth into the Department of Navy's networks, deployed tools to hundreds of thousands of people. And we did that at speed under the mindset that, we just had to do it. And what do we want to avoid now is that, we start to return to that pre-COVID status quo, where we shift right and let's have more meetings and let's stop and take stock. Not that we don't want to be careful and be thoughtful, but we've kind of proven that we can move quickly. We've proven that we can move kind of speed of industry. So let's not go back to that way. Let's keep the urgency alive and let's continue to drive that way.
George, welcome. I appreciate you being with us today. Where are you in your digital transformation effort? Are you seeing some of the same kinds of gains that Aaron referred to? And how are you going about trying to live in the world in which we are now, a year into the COVID situation?
Yeah, we are definitely. And, here's a Government Matters show, and I'm going to quote Lenin. Doesn't sound good, but he's quoted as saying, there are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. And I think we just saw that a year ago, where there are weeks when decades happen. This whole thing of COVID has accelerated our adoption of different technologies that, in all likelihood, we would not be at the same point had that not happened right now. And the whole idea of telework, of digital transformation, of all these things have been percolating in the background, really came to a full boil with the advent of COVID and really trying to get the workforce to think differently about how work gets done. Think differently that work is not a place, but it's an output. And I think things like telework are here to stay. So I agree with Aaron. I don't think there's going to be any going back.
What is the core, do you think, George, of getting people to think differently about how work gets done? What is technology? I understand is the driver, but it's just the driver. It's not the entire vehicle, and it's not the destination. How do you get people to think differently about the way they think about their jobs?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a book that was written probably a decade ago, and it was called The Shallows by Nicholas Carr. And the thesis of the book was that your mind is shaped by the tools that you have. And so when I start thinking about IT and technology, the ERP systems, our collaboration systems, all the tools that we use today were really 20-year-old technology on the average. Some as old as 30, some more recent. So our mind was shaped by those tools that we have. We no longer have those tools, so we should be thinking differently about how we solve problems with different tools. So any digital transformation, in order for it to be successful, has to begin with a business process reengineering. We have to think, okay, so now we want this outcome. What are ways of doing it with these new set of tools that we have? And I know Kevin will probably address a lot of those new tools in the ServiceNow offering.
Kevin, welcome, and thanks for joining the conversation. George used the word acceleration and some permutations of it. Aaron used the word rapidly and rapidity a number of times. Is that the biggest difference between what's happening now in digital transformation and maybe what was happening a year ago? The speed with which agencies have to move forward and the confidence in their ability to do it. I'm not sure that a lot of organizations thought they could move as fast as they've had to in the last year.
Yeah, so when we have major societal changes or emerging threats or issues that come up, it always forces us to do things that were happening anyway. So digital transformation was coming along very slowly, as these two gentlemen have talked about. But yes, the rate of change, the acceleration of change has absolutely expanded over the last 12 months. And to go back to a point earlier, I don't think we can put the genie back in the bottle. Multiple reasons. Employees' expectations are now higher. Not only have we liberated them from the office, most of them have been more productive and feel a greater tie to the mission. You have 4 generations working in the workforce now, and those 2 younger generations, your millennials and your Gen Zers, they have a different demand signal they're going to put out for what their work experience is going to be, and not only in a digital transformation mode, but just in a talent acquisition role. ServiceNow has kind of leaned into that. We are standing by with our expertise to partner with the federal government and integrators to make sure that we are able to capture all of those lessons for employee engagement, for customer engagements, for security. All of those things and managed risk come into play. And I don't think they're going to slow down just because we're getting the pandemic under control.
One comment you made there, Kevin, that I think is interesting. It ties back to my question to Aaron about not wanting to go back to the pre-COVID normal. You said we can't put the genie back in the bottle. Is there a possibility that we might take that idea for granted, that everybody might assume, well, it's never going to be the same again, and people might still, for that reason, have a tendency to backslide maybe more than they need to, rather than maintaining the momentum that we've been talking about?
There'll be an effort. There will be those folks who still want to go back to the way things were. But obviously, you've got a new administration in place who has a very different view of how they want to reform government. You've got heightened customer expectations, citizen expectations. Just an example, I live here in the state of California, and we made a mess of our unemployment benefits. There is now literally a citizen uprising, an attempt to recall the governor because of how badly that was bungled. I think the demand on modernization from customers and employees will just be too strong of inertia to overcome.
We have a focus on customer experience later in our program today, but I want to focus on that piece of it, Aaron, the internal customer in particular, as you're undertaking an IT portfolio review, looking at everything across government. IT modernization is a different concept, I'm learning at least, than digital transformation. What's the intersection, or what's the Venn diagram look like with those two concepts, and how are you thinking about each of those as you're moving out?
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess, before I do answer that, I do want to go back to something Kevin said. He talked about putting the genie back in the bottle, and I don't think it can be put back. What we're actually seeing now, this has moved beyond teleworking, and we're now seeing other elements of leadership planning around this capability that we're doing right now. We have efforts within the Navy now looking at real estate consolidation, looking at optimization of workforce, leveraging these tools, and this will become a way for the department to create efficiencies, to create optimizations. And so I think it's already getting built into how we operate going forward. But I guess back to your question about the intersection of kind of the experience of digital transformation and modernization, they're absolutely related. We talk about in digital transformation that there is a set of digital prerequisites that have to be done in order for that real transformation to happen on. So we have to have the modernized platform digitally ready to receive that transformation load. And this is then where modernization comes in, because this fits part and parcel with the modernization theme that I've been harping on at Department of Navy for the last 18 plus months. And so this goes to the heart of what are we doing to, bring our 20 plus year old networks and infrastructure to the modern age, where they really are digital prerequisites. And that has led to then the kickoff of an end-to-end portfolio review, where we're taking a hard look at that core infrastructure, which has to be that ready-to-go digital prerequisite. And that was the genesis for that effort that we launched across Department of Navy. And it's looking at a slice of the IT spend of about $4 billion. And, this goes to kind of core infrastructure, network, transport, productivity, et cetera. And so that's happening in its badly needed visibility. That's happening now in parallel with the modernization, engineering, architecture, and execution work, which has only been fueled and accelerated by COVID. And then that is the natural intersection with the digital transformation work. So these are all sort of intersecting trajectories, the way we see it.
So very quickly, Aaron, because I want to get to George, but it sounds like, if I'm paraphrasing you incorrectly, please let me know. Sounds like the digital transformation concept is the broad kind of overarching strategy, and the IT modernization piece of it, the intersection, is the architecture and kind of the nuts and bolts that you're undertaking to fulfill the vision that you and your colleagues determine suits the Navy best in that digital transformation journey. Is that a fair way to look at it?
Yeah, I think that's about right. Just for clarity, I would say that real digital transformation is not just a CIO-driven thing. This is, and the way we think about it here within Department of Navy, this is transformation that happens at the warfighting and the readiness and the business spectrum, where we really do look at how we deliver capability fueled and accelerated by the digital tools that we enable. The digital prerequisites, or the modernization piece, is sort of a big horizontal there that provides support for those warfighting business and enterprise digital transformation efforts to function from.
And thank you for that clarity. George, you made the point a moment ago that everything that you're undertaking involves looking at whatever the business is that's involved. And so it strikes me that construct would, I think, be the same or similar for you. Is that fair? Where the digital transformation is the broad overarching structure and the IT modernization pieces of it are more the tactical nuts and bolts stuff?
Yeah, riffing a bit on what Kevin said, is that you only have IT to solve a business or warfighting problem. So when we talk about digital transformation, we really use the phrase digital business transformation and link those two, because it's the technology that's enabling that change of mindset in how we're conducting our business, how we're getting the outcomes that we're looking for. And the IT modernization portion of that is really the scaffolding that enables that business transformation, whose logic is coded in software that we develop.
Kevin, that scaffolding idea, I think, is important, because when we lay out these ideas for very broad-based, kind of almost philosophical questions, that's fun to talk about, but at some point in time, somebody gets down to work, or some group of people gets down to work. What are the tools that practitioners like George and Aaron have now, and what do you see over the horizon for them to use in the future? Maybe they're not ready yet, but they're coming to be able to achieve some of these transformation and modernization efforts that we're talking about today.
Well, a modern cloud platform that enables you to bring together disparate data streams is really what's needed, because there's only so much money to go around. So you're going to have to maintain legacy systems while you're trying to modernize the various systems within your portfolio. So looking at modern cloud platforms that pull together that data so that you have either a single system of action and that takes feeds from these multiple systems of record is probably the way to look at it going forward. Looking at how you can get your finance tools and your logistics tools to work together with your HR tools and your maintenance tools, and so that the customer has a single point of entry and your employees have multiple feeds coming into a place so they can solve problems in a holistic manner. Part of that is, legacy systems have to be moved from from on-prem to cloud, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's only so many dollars to do it. So I think that you have to get the mission owners engaged to develop those solutions that overarch all of those.
We're starting to run out of time, so I want to go around the horn one more time with each of you. And Aaron, I'll start with you. You've been very clear in all of the conversations that you've had publicly and in the last 18 months that you don't want to bring the Navy up to today. You want to set the Navy up for where it needs to be 2 years, 5 years, a decade out. What are the building blocks for that piece of your strategy, Aaron?
Well, I think Kevin touched the right elements. It's really a cloud-based infrastructure that allows us to deliver capability portfolio, as a service, which is a building block for the business and readiness work that we have to do. And along with that cloud infrastructure, we need to enforce and drive changes in the way we develop and deploy software through agile methodologies, et cetera. So, it's really about increasing the pace, speed that we drive at. And along the way, I really view my role here as to continue to keep the heat on, kind of chief pressurizing officer, so that we keep our feet to the fire there.
CPO, you've created a new one today. I've never heard that one before in all my years covering the government. George, same question to you. What are the building blocks that you think will get DLA where you want it to be? Pick a time, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years out.
Yeah, a couple of fundamentals. Certainly automating workflows helps to speed things up, reduce human error in entries, and also helps to optimize our labor. And then, as both Kevin and Aaron kind of alluded to, is getting your digital architecture, or your data architecture in order. If you look at software is developed and it produces data, and data is used for analytics, and that's really where the future is in analytics and AI for rapid decision making. You have to have an architecture that supports the large-scale exchange of data. And we're changing our architecture. It's the part of the duck that you don't see swimming below the water, but fundamentally re-architecting for a data-driven organization that's enabled by processes, things like ServiceNow for enabling our workflow.
Kevin, final thought. Any pieces that organizations in the same situation that Aaron and George find themselves should think about that they didn't mention?
Well, I must say thanks, George, for the workflow plug. So love that. You know what? It's really all about unleashing the power of your employee force. Really, we've got great federal employees who rose to the occasion this year and did outstanding work in keeping the wheels of government rolling forward. Integrate them into your digital or IT transformation process. They are the smart folks who have a lot of good answers. So keep them engaged and keep them engaged often.
Kevin Brooks, George Duchak, Aaron Weiss, a terrific conversation. Thanks for kicking it off today.
Thank you.
Up next, a group of customer experience pros are here to give you best practices for implementing changes that impact customers, both internal and external. You're watching the Government Matters Thought Leadership Network. Stay with us.